Hi, I'm Alex Pault with Open Systems Media and Embedded Computing Design, and I'm here at the Things Conference with Melanie Rieback. She's with Radically Open Security, and well, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you here on stage, Melanie.
Thank you so much.
Now, security has become a really big issue in every space. I mean, security, personal security, device security, data security. That's a big space, a lot of moving parts. Mm-hmm. Where do you insert yourself into it?
So mostly I do, penetration testing. So basically I've worked in security for 15 years and I'm the CEO of a group of ethical hackers. So we hack companies, governments, organizations, basically anyone who pays us to break their systems, software, buildings, people.
Well, that's an incredibly cool job, if I may say so myself. Yeah. I'm ex-Army electronic warfare myself,
okay.
And Sneakers is one of my favorite movies.
Uh-huh.
So the whole aspect of hacking to begin with, and white hat hacking
yes.
is important and oddly commendable because you're hacking for good.
Yes. Yeah, it's very enjoyable. It's great to be able to play the bad guy and not get sent to jail, but still to do something useful.
Now, can you tell us about some of the more interesting application spaces that you've been involved in, or you don't have to give organizational names or targets, but say, these are some of the threats that we have encountered.
Yeah, well, I mean, we hack all kinds of different systems. I mean, everything from, we work with Google, I mean, which of course, we also work with banks that have their own sets of threats. We also work with supermarket chains, and everything from, if you walk into the typical supermarket, look around you. I mean, basically everything you see we've broken, so.
Very cool. Well, that's true, because you have smart shelving now, you've got all of these smart systems, and they're all holes into the network now.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we live in a sea of complexity, and anytime there's a software, I mean, statistically speaking, there's 16 bugs for every 1,000 lines of code. Some of those bugs are going to be security holes, and those can be exploited.
That's a very interesting fact to point out, of the preponderance of opportunities for the bad guys. So you find them so that they can patch them.
Yes, exactly. So but we work with a method that's called peek over our shoulder. So we work in chat rooms, and we actually invite customers into our chat rooms so they can actually watch us hacking their stuff. And
that's interesting.
Yes, it is. And they can overhear every single conversation our penetration testers are having throughout the course of the engagement, with the whole idea of really conveying the hacker mindset and really optimizing for knowledge transfer. And it works really well.
Now, do you deal with only the software hacking side, or do you also get involved with phishing or some of the human side of the security whole?
Yeah, well, we hack all kinds of things. I mean, we indeed do, software audits and systems audits and networking, and but also embedded and hardware and crypto. And but we also do phishing and social engineering. We've done lock picking, which is also really fun. So we also trainings. We do, and incident response. We do quite a few different kinds of services.
So now, when you say incident response, so they've actually had a penetration, they want you to forensic on the penetration, or just repeat the penetration, or? Yeah,
so in the case of incident response, they have actually been breached in some way, shape, or form, and they need us to help manage the incident. So in other words, how can we take control of things? How can we figure out what happened, make sure that all legislation, such as GDPR and data breach legislation, is complied with? How can we make sure that we figure out what happened, stop it, mitigate the damage, be able to recover back to a normal situation again, and also do the proper forensics, and also in a legal way that if they eventually do want to do a lawsuit, also that evidence is forensically sound.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up the whole aspect of compliance, because you don't think about that, right? I've been broken into, my data's been attacked, I got to worry about the government now.
Yes. Yeah, but especially since GDPR, there's really a whole lot that you have to think about, and also there's very strict time frames in which you have to react and respond.
What can you tell? I mean, like in the case of the GDPR and a data breach, what are the general guidelines?
Well, I mean, again, I am not a lawyer. I work
okay,
with
so
lawyers who do the advice for that particular thing. But generally, I mean, there's certain deadlines with which you have to do things. I mean, certain things need to be within, say, 2 days. Other things need to be within, a week. I mean, it's just sort of, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know all the exact details
Understood.
of this. But we do work with lawyers that help to facilitate the process.
Well, and that also exposes the incredible complexity of the issue that you have to deal with, because it's a social, a human, a technological issue.
Yes.
It's like wandering through a jungle, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about security. I mean, almost anything you can think of, either technological or social, I mean, has, ties in some way to security.
Now, considering security issues and security considerations, what is your position on LoRaWAN's security? Is it something you find easy to deal with, hard to deal with? You find that there's a high level of compliance in the industry? What's your take on LoRaWAN?
Right. So, I mean, first of all, LoRaWAN essentially is just small, sometimes power-limited computers, which means that they share a lot of commonalities with other kinds of computers. I mean, they have complexity in their source code. They also have networking, which, of course, can be exploited, and operating systems, which can be exploited. What does make it difficult is in situations where there are power limitations, because if they're operating on a single battery, then they oftentimes things like really hard, heavyweight crypto, the kind of industry standard crypto that we use for things like authentication and end-to-end encryption, it makes it a whole lot more difficult because sometimes it uses more battery than is acceptable for the requirements of the system. The other thing also is because you have distributed nodes, it also makes some other things a challenge, like key management, because what winds up happening is key distribution, but also if a key is breached, being able to change the keys, update the keys, revoke the keys. Oftentimes you have situations in which things are handled improperly, hard-coded keys, things like that. And this is also the kind of thing that you might encounter.
Very cool, Melanie. Now, considering that aspect, let's say I'm setting up a system. What are some of the top-level tips you can give me to help keep myself safe?
Yeah, so in either case, if you are a consumer, a lot of IoT, both LoRaWAN and otherwise, the single most important thing to do security-wise is update your software. So patch, because 99% of security breaches are used with vulnerabilities that are older than 1 year old. So.
Taking advantage of doors that were broken locks, but nobody took the time to fix it.
Yeah, and there were actually fixes that were put out. But these days, I mean, if you look at botnets on the internet, huge numbers of botnets are created these days out of IoT devices. Things like webcams that are unpatched. I mean, the really large denial of service attack against Brian Krebs was using webcams. But even things like Teslas, surprisingly enough, have been put into botnets with Bitcoin miners, and most expensive Bitcoin miner ever. But but basically any unpatched IoT, and there's search engines in which you can find this stuff. I mean, have a look at Shodan, for example, that can find all kinds of IoT and also SCADA devices that are just, unpatched. It surprises people actually how much crap there is unpatched on the internet.
Oh, yes and no, right? They all know something is odd, but they don't know exactly where it's unsafe.
Yeah.
But then that's an excellent point. So software patches are almost a brainless, I mean, as you point out, the solution is there. To not implement that solution it's like not washing your hands during this flu epidemic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it takes discipline. It's the same thing as making backups for people. Everyone knows they should make backups, but people always somehow find an excuse. It's the same thing with hygiene,
Very cool. So, before I let you go, number one, where do they go to find information? What's your URL?
Great. So if you want to reach out to us, you can look at radicallyopen.security.com. And we're based in Amsterdam, but we work globally. So, yeah.
Very nice, Melanie. Any last words for our audience before I kick you off the stage?
Well, just enjoy this conference and gain what you can. And thank you so much for all of your time and attention.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, giving me the time at this very busy event.
Thank you.